Hey guys, hi, welcome back once again. My name is Vaishali, and today I'd like to re-examine the concept of what we consider to be interesting. What's interesting? So in the last video titled What's Interesting, I had actually taken up this example through this movie PK, wherein I tried to understand the concept of what's interesting for us, what we consider to be interesting, what we consider to be fascinating, and thereby, on the flip side, what appears to be boring or mundane for us. So, if we once again review the movie, and if we once again analyze the movie, we'd kind of get to understand two different perspectives of reality, experienced through two different lenses, experienced through two different perceptions. Now, here was this alien who lands on planet Earth, and not like Christopher Columbus, who accidentally happened to land on some place. The aliens consciously chose to visit the planet called Earth. So, the first question, which had never come to me before, was that we also have been trying to do the same thing for I don't know for how long. We've been trying to find different kind of life forms in our own solar system. And here was another species that had not only been wanting to do the same, but they had actually materialized it. Through their own science, if that's what they call it, and through their own research, they actually were able to find a planet wherein life form existed and has been functioning on this planet for billions and billions of years, which naturally should create a curiosity to ask as to how has somebody else managed to do it, what we have only been wanting to do, desiring to do for the longest time possible. Now let's move a step ahead. Here was also an alien who landed without any clothing, and if we can unpack it, we'll see the multiple layers to that aspect as well. When I analyze it, it tells me a few things. Firstly, they kind of feel very comfortable in who they are, which invariably means that they do not need to hide themselves or to camouflage themselves with certain external factors. In a way, it also tells me that's the highest form of self-acceptance that one has towards their own self. Invariably, somewhere also implying that probably the place that they came from has no concept of shame. And as Brené Brown, the shame and the vulnerability researcher, would put it, shame hates it when we reach out and tell our story. It hates having words wrapped around it. It can't survive being shared. Shame loves secrecy. When we bury our stories, the shame metasizes. And through that, we come to understand the lesser degree of shame we feel, the more whole we feel within our own selves. The lesser is the need to hide. The lesser is the need to project perfectionism. And probably the greater is the need for evolution. It also tells me that if we do not carry shame within our own selves, we probably would not throw it out onto somebody else. We would not be shaming somebody else as well, because we can only give to others what we are capable of giving to our own selves. Now, the aspect of clothing also told me that we wear clothing to physically protect ourselves from any kind of a harm or a threat. That unconsciously there is a fear mechanism that operates, which kind of goes that I'm not safe. So this piece of garment, this piece of clothing keeps me safe. Which in contrast also tells me that probably the place that he came from actually had no concept of harming the other. So there was actually no fear running the lives of those aliens that came from that place, because there was no projection of harm from the other. In a way, probably telling us that most of the times those aliens did not operate out of fear, consciously or unconsciously. And as I've mentioned a lot many times before, it also tells me that probably they did not have a gender identity. They did not get stuck with identifying with their genders and the roles that are associated with gender play. Invariably also telling me that they probably never had stereotypes as well. Somewhere also implying that the concept of gender inequality doesn't exist. And probably in such a society, in such a culture, there would be no need of a Me Too movement. There would be no need to see what's happening in Syria right now. An individual, because of the lack of better word, would be seen for who they are and their potentials and not for the gender that they represent. And even if they did, it would not be bounding them, but in fact, it would be more freeing them. He's also somebody who's unfamiliar with the concept of a verbal language. And when he comes here, he's a bit confused and even fascinated that we not only have to take care of our verbal language, but also our body language. One has to be observant about both of those aspects. Through the movie, we also come to understand that he sees that as humans, we have a disintegration within our own thoughts, our feelings, our words, and our actions. Most of the times, they are not aligned. They are not in a sync. Many a times humans think of something else, they are feeling something else, they speak something else, and then they do something else. And if we can look into ourselves, we'll understand that that's a resultant of trying to fit into our own community, to try and fit into our own tribe, to try and fit into what's normal within our own family as well. What's acceptable within all of these three frameworks. So metaphorically speaking, most of the times we try and fit ourselves into clothings that are not the right size for us. And rather than custom designing our own clothing in keeping with our own size and in keeping with our own requirement, we fit into the clothings that have generally been passed around. Quite naturally helpful as a way to survive, but may not necessarily be helpful when it comes to thriving. And in a way, it also is reflective about something else, that our bodies keep the scores of all small and big lies that we tell. And that is why lie detector tests are done through our body parts, because our body parts reveal what our words do not reveal. In a way, also implying that most of the times we suppress our own thoughts, our own feelings, our own emotions. In a way, suppressing our own selves. And in a way, science tells us that the more we repress and the more we suppress, the more stress our body feels. The more stress it is, the more inflamed it gets internally, because there's an internal conflict. The more inflamed it is, the more it gets prone to diseases, dis-ease within the body itself, within the organism which is ourselves. The movie also addresses the concept of religion, which probably the aliens do not have on their planet. So when he lands here, he's quite fascinated with the concept that the creator of the humankind lives within themselves, lives within their houses, lives within their homes, lives within the gullies and the mohallas. And yet, despite the creator living within us, living in between us, we are constantly creating wars in the name of that creator. We are constantly fighting in the name of that creator. And if we can amalgamate all of these concepts and look at it through a different lens, we'd probably understand that we would not need clothing to hide ourselves. And invariably, the clothing business would go out of business. Invariably, the marketing business for the clothing business. On the other side, if we can understand the concept of integration, wherein we are in complete harmony with our thoughts, our feelings, our words, and our actions, invariably also implying that there would be lesser corruption. invariably also implying that there would be lesser crimes, invariably also implying that if the crime rates went down drastically, the judiciary system may not necessarily have pending cases for years and years and decades together. It would also make us realize that the law would then not need to be enforced because people would be willing to take their own responsibility, their own accountability for all their actions, or at least their contribution in their actions. If we can understand that if we were totally integrated, implying that our health would improve, which means that our healthcare system would actually then not remain a healthcare system because the health would be taken care of for the individual is whole and intact and not in an internal conflict within their own selves and with the outside world as well, thereby implying that medical system would probably only come into the picture if there was a certain major accident which needed to be taken care of, which needed to be addressed medically, and thereby it will probably be then called as the accident care system, which would make us question about all of our systems. The medical system, the healthcare system, the administrative system, the marketing systems, the judiciary system, the social systems with regards to equality and inequality, and even the financial, the economic systems. And since all of those systems would then need to be rewired, would then need to be re-edited, we kind of keep playing the game that we have been familiar with, that we have known all our lives. And I'm not really sure whether our way of living is more interesting or that way of living is more interesting. Because if you're not dealing with these internal conflicts, somewhere it gives us more space, more time, more energy, more inclination to get interested in things above and beyond our own selves, even to get interested within our own selves. There is time and space for deeper inquiry, which is where probably the aliens were able to manage to come to Earth, which we only have been dreaming about for the longest time possible. And maybe since we have gotten used to living with the internal and the external conflicts, maybe since we have got used to understanding that we need a judiciary system to be able to take care of the crime in a way reflective that we need crime to be able to have the judiciary system also in place. Maybe since we've gotten used to the idea that we need to be able to experience peace through having a war, the idea of peace in itself may sound a little boring. And the reason to understand this and the reason to question that is that if we feel that we need this kind of our present reality to be able to have or experience an interesting life, unconsciously, there are a lot of messages that we are giving ourselves. Unconsciously, we are telling ourselves that we need insanity to be able to experience sanity. Unconsciously, we are telling ourselves that we need something like a war to be able to have an experience of peace. Unconsciously, we are telling ourselves that at times it's okay to tell small lies, big lies, white lies, half lies, full lies, without really realizing that our body keeps the scores. Unconsciously, we are telling ourselves that our place is not safe enough for us to survive as and how we exactly are. And that is where he also says, now he gets that the entire spectrum, that the entire system or systems are running, driven by fear. And if we do not look into that, it's our unconscious, it's our subconscious that will keep driving us. And as Carl Jung had said, that till we don't become aware of our own unconscious, it'll keep running us and we'll keep calling it fate. Let's try and become a little more aware about our unconscious. Let's try and rewrite our own stories. Let's try and rewrite our own concepts about our own concepts that we have for ourselves. Let's try and do that, and I will see you once again the next week. Till then, stay tuned in. And guys, if you do like the contents of my videos, please do like, share, and subscribe.